Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Digital Dentistry Decoded podcast, a podcast where we keep you in the know of all things digital dentistry. Now, in the past few episodes, we have been talking about one of the biggest hot topics in dentistry, 3D printing, and talking to the likes of Asiga and SprintRay and Formlabs and a lot of the executives there. Today, we have a very special guest, and I'm really excited to see his perspective on this market. This is Nicolas Rohde, the Chief Strategy Officer at VHF. How are you doing, Nicolas? Nice to have you here.
Good. Well, Dr. Ahmad, thanks for having me today. Pleasure to see you.
Yeah, no,
As always.
the pleasure is mine, my friend. We have caught up a lot of times at IDS, at different shows, and thank you so much for your time. Look, like I say, the industry is really heating up, and I'm really curious to hear from someone like you who obviously is hardcore into milling. But look, before we get into all of that, please introduce yourself. I think most people should know what VHF is, but just a little bit about your background, what you do, and what people should know.
Absolutely. Yeah, born and raised in Berlin, Germany. I've lived in the US for several years, have both citizenships, traveled a lot the world. From an education standpoint, I have a business background, MBA, PhD, but I'm in dental for the majority of my career, actually since 2003. And I'm extremely passionate about dentistry, in particular digital dentistry, which I've worked for the past 13 years. So I'm really excited to be here today and to chat about digital dentistry.
And I think everyone should know what VHF is, right? Like, if you don't know what VHF is in digital dentistry, there might be something wrong. But can you introduce it to people? I mean, obviously you're a milling machine manufacturer, but please, just a little bit about VHF, your different products, in case someone out there has no idea.
Absolutely. Yeah. So VHF was founded 35 years ago as a little startup in a garage with software, actually, software that was used for running CNC milling machines. And then at some point, the company started building their own milling machines, but still on the industrial side of milling. Dental was just added about 15 years ago, I believe, and has overtaken the whole company. It's like nowadays we do 90% in dentistry and 10% still on the industrial side of milling.
That's insane, man. That's incredible how that pivot led to so much of the company. And look, I've known you for a while now, Nicolas. You're a super passionate guy. You climbed the ranks kind of pretty fast. Did I read it correctly? You were the CEO of VHF at one point?
Well, actually, when we met, I was the CEO of the US subsidiary of VHF. And I've done that for 3 years. And then we hired a different local person. I still live with the family in Germany and got the position of Chief Strategy Officer for VHF globally and also for both areas, the dental and the industrial milling.
Fascinating, man. Congratulations. That's an incredible career. Now, so talk to me about the products for a second. And this is not a marketing plug because you guys have a lot of products and I want to wrap my head around it myself. So you have the E series, you have aligner cutters, you have the lab series. What are kind of the main products for people out there trying to figure this out? Because your mills are some of the most popular in dentistry. And is there a kind of easy way to wrap it all up, what you guys offer for dentists and labs?
Well, let me say, when we entered the dental side of milling, our kind of like key differentiator was that the milling machines were all tabletop. And that was at a time where milling machines were still huge machines. The lava mills from 3M and such, some people might remember. And nobody could believe that Zirconia can be milled on a tabletop machine. And we stayed true to that conviction that a machine should be small and you should be able to place it everywhere in your lab, in your clinic, you name it. And then, so through our whole line of milling machines, you see they're all tabletop machines. But it starts, let's say, with an easy entryway, the Ease class, and you have a more robust line for higher volumes, our performance class, and then you have the high-end machines that have a ton of automation and convenience features. And it really depends on your needs, what kind of machine you want to get with, and yeah, what kind of applications you want to do, what your volume is. Are you a dentist? Are you a lab? So there's a machine for every.
And again, I'm curious, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot here. What's bigger, you guys, lab or clinic? I assume lab, surely.
Well, yeah, I mean, milling has been around in lab for many, many years now. There's quite a saturation of milling machines in the lab markets. Of course, labs also have to replace their machines now that were purchased 8-10 years ago. But the doctors in clinics, they just start getting their feet wet in milling. And of course, we have seen CEREC around for many, many years. But it was still, let's say, confined audience. Not everyone wanted to go into investing a 6-digit number to buy a closed system and start milling in their clinic. But prices have come down. Easiness is there now, so that, yeah, more and more people get into milling also on the clinic side.
And at IDS recently, you guys had a pretty big IDS, like a software overhaul. Correct me if I'm wrong, no particularly new hardware, but the focus has all been on revamping the software. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely right. And to understand that, I probably should say that VHF is not only manufacturing milling machines, but we offer the complete milling package. We also design and manufacture the milling tools, and we develop the Chem software that goes with it. And that's actually one of VHF's key differentiators. And with these 3 components in our hand, we are really able to fine-tune the system for best results. And at IDS, we presented our new Chem software, Dental Chem 9, which is completely revamped software package. And there's a lot of automation included, auto nesting, auto pinning. Why is automation important? Because we want to make it super easy to run a milling machine. That's actually also VHF's vision. Our innovations enable everyone to produce independently. So it could be a temp in a lab or an assistant in a dental clinic. You don't need like extensive training. It's relatively self-explanatory. Of course, you need some training, but yeah, you don't need an engineering degree.
And that's actually one thing that I have to say that VHF does do well, because look, I'm a dentist. We have a lab, so I leave the dental lab technicians to deal with their equipment. But a lot of mills for chairside, apart from CEREC, are really just lab mills made smaller. But the CAM and the software is really not that easy to use, and a lot of clinicians struggle with. So when I saw your guys' new software in IDS, honestly, I was impressed. It looks super slick, modern, kind of like Apple kind of UI. It's smooth, and all the AI features to nest. It was really quite amazing. And do you see this as the kind of the next frontier for milling machines? Because do you feel like hardware in milling has stagnated, or what's the conception there?
Well, yeah, I mean, we have invested a lot in hardware over the past years, and I guess what we have launched 2 years ago is still unique in the market with the E-Series. But on the software side, we made a huge step here, and that's what our customers wanted and what they got eventually. So the easiness in operating the milling machine, and the CAM software is a big part of it. But then also the second big piece that we presented at IDS is our new customer portal, My VHF, where the user can see all their devices, the status of the mill, what kind of job they're milling right now. And they also get insights on how you utilize your milling machine. So we're pretty excited about this too.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's fascinating where the industry is going. And I'm really curious to kind of pick your brain a little. As a guy who's been working with milling machines for a long time, in dental especially, in terms of the hardware front, do do you see any more big changes coming? Like, I don't know. I just feel like, in a way, milling machines, at least on the outside, let's say, from a, I wouldn't say superficial level, but they've kind of been the same or similar for the past 6, 7 years. We got faster zirconia milling and machines with vacuums in them, or compressors. But what's your take on this? Is there like a theoretical limit of where milling machines are going? I mean, and I know that's rich to ask someone who is a chief strategy officer of a milling machine company, but what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it always goes faster, smaller, maybe less expensive. So we did a lot of work in that regards over the past years. And I see there's still a lot of opportunity also in terms of general innovation. Let's say what we did with the East class also, that it does not require compressed air anymore. Not even an internal compressor. It's just with a little fan on the milling tool, it generates enough flow to clean the inside out. So that's on the hardware side, but then on the material side, there's also still a lot of companies, big companies, investing tremendously in milling materials besides printing materials. But milling is still, there's still a lot of road to be seen in milling.
Interesting. One thing you guys said, and I loved it in your sign, I took a picture of it and I put it on my Instagram, and a lot of people laughed, to be honest. And it was that quote that you guys have: "We love milling because perfection cannot be printed." That was hilarious. It's quite a dig on 3D printing, and I want you to go off the cuff a little bit, Nicholas. Maybe we should have got some beers into you before the podcast. But what do you think? What do you think of this? What's happening to the industry? Do you think it's a lot of hot air? What's your thoughts? Because obviously there's a lot of attention to 3D printing restorations. Please, what are your thoughts on?
Of course, it was, or it is, a provocative claim or theme for the trade show that we picked here. And why did we do that? Because we wanted to get into discussions. I mean, printing is great technology, hands down. However, there's an excessive hype around 3D printing, and we just wanted to raise also awareness about the limitations in terms of durability. So if you compare the flexural strength of printing materials, even the ones that are now approved as final restorations, we have here a sprint race ceramic crowns around 150 megapascal. If you compare that to Emax, it's 530 megapascal, and then Zirconia goes up to 1200 megapascal. So it's a completely different league. You have limited aesthetics. It doesn't compare to a highly translucent Emax or a multi-layer Zirconia. You have really beautiful lifelike shades and translucency in those Zirconia materials, or also PMMA, layered PMMA materials. Yeah, and our claim, the company claim, is creating perfection. And that is because we strive to create the perfect machine. I mean, generally, is there perfection? No, perfection can never be achieved, but can at least strive towards it. And we strive to create the perfect machine. But more importantly, is that we give the tools to our customers to create perfect restorations for their patients. And yeah, that's what drives us in what we're doing every day. And this also with the perfection got then here into the theme. And I mean, also in terms of predictability, what I've heard, at least from 3D printer users, is that it's not as predictable as milling.
So, what do you think is driving this hype? I mean, is it as simple as the 3D printing companies just spending a lot of marketing? They have a very big marketing budget, or what are your thoughts? Because you obviously, I'm sure you have a very keen interest in this market and what's going on in it. And I'm sure you guys have a lot of smart people in your company have probably discussed this. What is the reason for this crazy hype that we're seeing, in your opinion?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's great technology. It certainly has its advantages. And for certain indications, I would say it's clear, it has a clear advantage over milling. If you look, for example, at models, no one would mill a model anymore. This is much better, faster, and less expensive to print it. Or a drill guide, for example, is also something that you can just quickly print, and you don't need to mill it. However, if you look in the direction of final restorations, we're not there yet. And from the material properties of printing materials, not in the foreseeable future.
Is that just because of the realistic and theoretical limits of resin? That's just, we have to accept it, guys. Resin will only go so far, and Emax and Zirconia is a different class, or?
Yeah, I mean, you have here highly filled printing materials, but even the ones that say now it's 50% plus ceramic material is already a lot better than the materials that were there before. But you still have then that almost 50% resin material with the limitations that it just does not have the flexural strength on top of the structural integrity when you print something on site as compared to produce a material in a controlled environment in a big factory.
It's actually a really interesting point that you bring up, because it was something that I spoke with Max Mills about from Densiplice Rhone, and he said that, when you print versus just milling a block, you're kind of adopting all the issues with manufacturing that thing rather than have it be made industrially in a controlled facility. And that brings up the other kind of discussion. Do you ever think that printing materials will get to that point? I mean, I know this is theory crafting, or is there just a very clear theoretical limit?
Yeah, from what we know today, and that's probably from a limited viewpoint here, because we are all not material scientists, but what we read and what we hear from academia about milling or printing materials, it's impossible to print 100% ceramic, or it is possible, but then the process takes very long time. The machines are super expensive, and we are far away still from that adopting in a lab or a clinic.
And so what I'm hearing from you in a way is that, look, I guess in a lab or clinic, because there's a lot of this printing versus milling discussion, and I really think it's the wrong discussion. I mean, I'm hearing from you it's more like a coexistence. Is that a better way of thinking about it?
Exactly. I also see that as complementary. As I said, for certain indications, it has its clear advantages. Other indications, millis, advantageous. There are also, what is probably interesting here, hybrid workflows. So, for example, a laser melting of metals, which is an additive process, cannot be as precise and cannot generate the surface finish. So you can put the workpiece in a mill afterwards and just finish the parts. For example, an implant connection that needs to be 100% accurate.
That is actually very fascinating. I haven't heard of that. I don't really get into that side of manufacturing. Is that a workflow that is done today?
It is done today.
Oh,
yes.
wow.
More on the lab side, obviously, or milling printing centers, it is done by. But then also in terms of complementary technologies, what we've noticed is that a lot of dentists actually went into printing because the prices came down. And for them, it's often just the starting point in digital production, because at some point they notice the limitations.
Yeah.
And I've heard from one dentist, and I always love to quote her, but she said for her, printing was the gateway drug for milling. So she saw their limitations and then wanted to jump into milling.
That's a really good point. And again, something that I spoke to In the last podcast episode about Max, I told him, is all this printing impacting milling? And he said, no, in a way it's going to uplift milling because more and more people are getting into printing and realizing that they want to do more, etc. So I guess in your portfolio, if there's a dentist out there, what's kind of the entry-level price for a VHF mill? The most entry-level mill, how much does it cost in USD?
So if you look at a milling machine that mills single blocks for single restorations, then you're looking at about 20,000 USD.
That's not even that bad. I mean, a lot of people have this perception, including myself, that milling machines are, way more expensive than a printer. And yes, I guess if you compare it to a $200 printer, they are. But if you compare it to like a $10,000 Midas, then double the cost, and you're technically being able to open up a whole different material class for your clinic.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Prices, as I said, have come down. I had to look up. We increased prices not too long ago.
I'm going to quote you. This is going to be published everywhere.
Close enough. Yeah, but it is really affordable. And as I said, also the workflow here is so easy. And referring again to the dentist who said that it is the entry or the gateway drug, people who have printers, they have already figured out the workflow. So these are the low-hanging fruit customers for us, because they know exactly already what is needed on the design side, and then adding a mill is basically a piece of cake.
100%. I mean, I always say it. In CAD/CAM, the inputs, which is the scanner, CBCT, face scanner, is the easy part, and the output, I believe, is the easy part, the mill or the printer. I think the biggest bottleneck right now is just the CAD. And if you already have a customer who's printing, then they've figured it all out. And it's not that hard to plug a milling machine into that workflow.
Absolutely. And we've seen here a lot of development from the big players in the CAD field, but also from new companies in regards to AI design. So I think this will make it really easy for labs to cope with volume, but then also for clinics. You don't have the need anymore for someone who knows the morphology and exactly how to design a beautiful crown.
Yeah, the AI piece is fascinating, and I can't wait to see it unfold and actually be mainstream, because I think it's going to be the opening of the floodgates for a lot of clinicians to incorporate a printer or a mill in-house, no doubt. I'm also curious, do you know what the rates are? Because these percentages of how many milling machines are in clinics is floated around. Do you know a rough idea of, like, let's say the market leader, USA, they have 50% practices have scanners. How many practices have milling machines? Do you have any idea?
Oh, it's so different in different markets. But in some markets, we see saturation. I mean, in labs, probably 80, 90%. And in clinics, I would say still considerably lower, not even 20% yet. Yeah, so there's still a lot of room for growth. And as I said, also sometimes they don't know about their need yet, but it's up to us to educate customers out there.
That fits, that pretty much fits what I've heard as well. Around 15 to 20% of clinics have milling machines, which, like you say, is a huge runway in the future for more and more practices to adopt this. I'm also curious, I mean, obviously you guys are one of the market leaders. There's CEREC, there's VHF, and I guess DG Shape, and it seems like there's a million milling machine companies out there. When you walk around IDS, there's so many different milling machines out there. And I guess for someone listening to try to sift through all of this, do you have any advice on things they should look out for when picking a milling machine?
Oh, absolutely. That's an easy one. Look for a company that
starts with V.
Exactly. And ends with HF. No, look for a company that has a good reputation in the market and reputation about the machines themselves, but also in terms of service and training. This is, I think, is something that you and your listeners want as a fallback solution here. If something goes wrong or if they have forgotten how to operate something, then it's always good to just pick up the phone and have someone who is well trained and who can quickly help you, because we all know at the end there's a patient waiting for a restoration, and you don't want a patient to be rescheduled. You want to deliver here in time. So I think that's very important for the peace of mind, even though we are trying to make the machines now easier and easier and the software easier to operate. But it is definitely an important part.
And apart from support, any other tips? I mean, are they all? Has the hardware saturated, and there's a lot of milling machines that can do a good enough job? Like I feel like it's a bit like scanners now, where the scanner market today is not the same as 2016, and these days almost any modern scanner you pick up can scan at least to a certain degree of efficiency and also accuracy. They're all good enough. And has milling machines become like that?
I don't think so. We, of course, have seen a lot of new competitors in the market that are also quite price aggressive, but it's extremely important to look at the total cost of ownership. If you invest a lower amount of money in a machine, but then down the road you have to pay more for repairs, for maybe outsourcing cases because your machine was not reliable, you have to be very mindful of what the cost down the road will be. Plus, then reliability, predictability is all extremely important. You don't want to jeopardize milling a crown. To save a little bit of money, you need to be sure that you have perfectly fitting, highly aesthetic crown for your patient when you actually need it, when the patient's in the chair.
And the topic of crown, once again, so we talked about the 3D printing thing. You brought something to my mind when you said crown. So people now are 3D printing resin crowns, and there's a big hype train about doing this. And whether or not it's good enough is a different story. Do you have any idea why people don't just mill resin composites if they're so excited about resin printable crowns?
I mean, their composite materials have been in the market for a very long time now, but they've never really had the breakthrough, even though there are some advantages, but say aesthetic standpoint, flexural strength standpoint, the trusted materials here are, I would say, lithium disilicate, Emax, and Zirconia, and more and more people want to have their restorations built in Zirconia. What maybe also was a reason is, I don't know if you remember back in the day, that 3M Lava Ultimate material.
Debonding.
That was a composite material, and what was it called? Hybrid composite material. And there was a huge scandal, I would say, because it was used for quite some time, thousands of restorations, and they started to debond. Yeah. And I guess that left a bad taste in the mouth of a lot of dentists who had to call their patients back. And yeah, what I think is also an important part here is toxicity. Now going back to printing, those resin materials, they often contain chemicals, acrylates and other monomers and oligomers, and they can be toxic if ingested or absorbed through skin. And then during the printing process, there are fumes generated that pose a high risk when you work for a longer time in close proximity. So you need a strict protocol for handling those materials, and also fume extraction and filtration systems are recommended. But as around. They're not very common. Then post-processing, you need proper curing and the right wavelength of your UV light, right temperature. But then even if the printed pieces are properly cured, I don't know if you know that, but they're still moderately to severely cytotoxic, as researchers of the LMU Munich found out. So I think that's all something that one has to keep in mind. And I don't know if I would ask you now, you would need a crown. Would you want to have a crown inserted for you or your loved ones, a printed or a milled crown? What would you say?
I would use Emacs, no doubt.
And you can ask pretty much any dentist if it comes to their own teeth, they go with milled materials. And again, then the question, what is good enough? Maybe in terms of aesthetics, flexural strength. I also heard, hey, if I charge my patient X amount, I cannot afford they have breakage within 2, 3, 4 years. And then the toxicity, I think that's an area that has been really avoided. No one is really looking into that. And I kind of invite everyone and encouraged everyone to look at a material safety data sheet of any 3D printing material. Just make sure that you're sitting. The many warnings and hazards and dangers might put people right off. But milling materials then, on the other hand, even the hybrid ones, they are non-hazardous, neither during processing nor post-processing. I think that's an important point.
Yeah, I think that's definitely definitely an important point, and something that, do you think it's just like a ticking time bomb? We're just avoiding this thing, and everyone's jumping on this hype train, and everyone around the world is printing now. And do you think this is just like a big problem or a lawsuit waiting to happen?
Well, I wouldn't want to go that far because we don't know, but there's certainly the risk out there, and it should not be neglected. This is why I personally also, I think for everything that stays not long-term in a patient's mouth, say like maybe a drill guide or maybe a mouth guard or maybe a temp, but everything that stays long-term in a patient's mouth, I would personally not want to do it, and that I would not recommend it to a loved one.
It's fascinating.
And maybe we find out that it is more toxic, and there will be cases where people get sick. Maybe not. Maybe this is just research in the wrong direction. But it was done by LMU Munich, which is a reputable university, by reputable researchers. Daniel Edelhoff, one of them. There will be more research needed, no doubt. That's also what they wrote. But I personally found it a little alarming.
Do you think in that light, a lot of discussions been had in the industry about, milling hasn't changed so much, and it's just zirconia and faster milling, and now printing is like this rocket that's just going at 1,000,000 miles per hour. And there's all this discussion about, will milling companies meet the challenge, or do you just see that they don't really have to, and they just need to let this fizzle out and the hype die down a little bit? What's your perspective? Are you just sitting watching this all unfold, or does it alarm you that what's happening in the dental industry, or what's your perspective?
No, I mean, we see the demand for the foreseeable future in milling, and it's on us now to innovate here, to have really easy to use machines, super nice workflows. I think that's also something that we put a lot of focus on, to have streamlined workflows. Then on the other hand, the material manufacturers, they are also inventing. The materials get nicer, even more lifelike, with other better material qualities. Yeah, we are observing what's going on the 3D printing side, but we're pretty relaxed that there's a space for everyone.
On the material side, again, I want to pick your brain a little bit, because I don't mean to be rude. I mean, personally, I can't think of a milling material that's excited me in a long time. we we had Zirconia and that updated, and we had Emax. That was a big change, and then we had this, hybrid boom, and then every company was making hybrid ceramics. You remember when Straumann, Nice Block, Celtra, not Celtra Duo, that was the Lisi wave. We had the what's the GC one? I can't remember. The skips my mind. You know the one. Come on, Nicholas, help me out. I'm going to find this GC hybrid, and we'll just have to. This is like the blooper reel. Me and Sarah Smart. Thank you.
Yes.
Sarah Smart, and we had this huge wave of hybrids. And so the point I was getting at is I can't think of a material that was like, wow, this is super exciting. I mean, I think part of the excitement with printing is just how much headlines they're capturing with we made a new crown resin, we made a new press resin, now we have pods and capsules. I want to ask you, has there genuinely been anything in the past year or two that's excited you on the material front for milling? And please let us know so we're enlightened.
I mean, there are some developments that are not launched yet that are exciting. But if I look back, I think we are already at a relatively high level. So the improvements are maybe not that groundbreaking anymore. But if you look at some of the super aesthetic layered zirconia materials, where you not only have different shades, but different translucencies, opacities to cover things up, and also different strength properties in the layers. That was very exciting. That is very exciting to me.
So I have to agree, and I believe this is why a lot of people view milling as kind of stagnated in a way. And I just think it's a product of its success, this kind of stagnation, in that, like you say, it's just at such a high level now. And I think we're so spoiled for choice with milling. There's so many options now, so many resins, so many materials, disilicates, silicates, zirconia, and they're all from very reputable companies. And some of these materials have like 20-year histories, and they're quite good with like 95% success rate. So this is, I think, why part of the reason why printing is capturing so many headlines, because it's just new and exciting.
Probably, yeah.
And so on the front of not material science, maybe just the industry itself. Let's talk about the dental industry in the last 5-10 minutes we have together. What are some exciting things? I mean, you walked around IDS. What are some exciting things that you saw that you thought this was very interesting?
Yeah, I mean, automation was a big topic. AI was a big topic. We touched that already earlier with AI design, but it's creeping in all different kinds of dentistry, and there's a lot of potential, obviously. But what I found interesting, comparing also to the many IDSs that I have attended before, that digital has really become now the new standard. It's not something progressive anymore. It's the new standard. It's what people do, and it's amazing also to see how the industry's players are working together nowadays to provide solutions rather than products. And that's also what I said earlier, that we are looking at the workflow and work closely here with other big companies in the industry to create optimal integration and just make it super easy for the users.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I don't think I've been to as many IDSs as you, Nicholas. How many have you been to now?
I think it was number 8
Oh,
this
wow.
time.
Yeah, that's a lot better than me. I think my first IDS was must have been 2017 or 19. I can't remember when my first IDS was, but it's not many. I can count them on one hand. And in that short time that I saw the industry, I have to agree. This last IDS, for anyone who's listening and didn't get to go, you have to go to the next one because it is just incredible. Just like Nicholas said, how digital has really taken over our industry. It's not this niche thing anymore. I mean, it's good for guys like me and Nicholas who are super passionate about it, because before we're in a way outcasts, and especially in the clinic side, I remember in 2016, if you told dentists, or I think it was must have been 2017, if you told dentists that, scanning beats impression material, they would look at you like you're crazy. There was no
Yeah.
chance that it beats impression material. And now it's just all around us. This is the standard, like Nicholas says. It is the way we do things. It is the future. And it is fascinating, this play on solutions, not products. You put it perfectly. A lot of these companies now are creating workflows. It's all about the end product and the patient journey. Now, I mean, to wrap up this podcast, Nicholas, I'm very mindful of your time, and I really appreciate you setting time aside out for us. What are some advice you give people out there who, especially, I mean, the labs sound like they're saturated, but at least for clinicians who are out there, I mean, maybe around some of the misconceptions that are out there around milling and printing, and also just some general advice for those people who want to take the next step.
Absolutely. So what I would advise here, all dentists out there who want to get into digital dentistry, is first get a partner that has the expertise and that can help them and educate them. And then what I also would suggest is to go step by step. Start with intraoral scanning, and then see how you can add the design component, find a nice AI service maybe, or it could be also the lab around the corner who you have worked with for a long time and who will do the design for you. And with that, you have also the expertise of the lab in your practice. And then get into production at some point, but then also here, step by step, look what is easiest, single molar crowns, for example, and then slowly progress, and you'll see it's a lot of fun. You will be super proud when you did your first screw retained crown or your interior that just turned out beautiful. Or a custom apartment, or you name it. It's endless possibilities, opportunities. But yeah, what I would suggest is to really go step by step.
You heard it there first from Nicolas Rohde, the Chief Strategy Officer. Look, Nicholas, I really appreciate your time once again. Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast.
Dr. Ahmad, it was a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
And I look forward to seeing you again in future events, maybe at the next IDS, hopefully sooner. And thank you for everyone who is listening. I really appreciate you supporting our podcast. To keep up to date with all things digital dentistry, go to instituteofdigitaldentistry.com. And please like, follow, and share this podcast with your friends, with your colleagues, as it helps us out a lot. We will see you in the next episode of the Digital Dentistry Decoded podcast. Thanks for listening.